Hello, guys. Welcome back to Faith Movies. Today's movie recap will be a drama and melodrama movie from 2019 called Breakthrough. Warning, there are spoilers ahead. The movie starts with John Smith, a 14-year-old boy living in Missouri with his adoptive parents, Joyce and Brian Smith. John attends a Christian middle school and is well liked by his peers. He shines as a basketball player, loves pop music, and has a crush on a girl named Abby. However, John often feels abandoned by his birth parents, which makes him act coldly towards his parents and teachers. Joyce, his caring mother and a deeply faithful person, tries her best to connect with him despite his standoffish behavior. She's always there for him, taking him to his activities, making him go to church on Sundays, and driving him to school and basketball practice. In a school assignment to present a family history, John confesses he hasn't finished it, claiming lack of time. His teacher warns him of a potential failure in the subject, but John seems indifferent. Later in school, during a basketball game, John gets into a fight with another student, Chad. The coach intervenes and reminds John that his poor academic performance could get him benched, which troubles John because he values basketball greatly. The next day, he presents a brief report sharing that he was adopted by his parents during their missionary work in Latin America and knows little about his biological family. Meanwhile, Joyce is at a worship group meeting which is interrupted by Jason, the new pastor, who hasn't seen their booking on the sign-up sheet. Joyce is visibly annoyed and admits she's not fond of Jason's preaching style or his hairstyle. Later, the Smith family attends a service where Jason is preaching. He tries to win everyone over, young and old, by inviting rappers and singers. Later, he attempts to chat with the Smiths, but Joyce is quite harsh, and John thinks he's silly and over the top. However, Brian treats him kindly. Afterward, John plays basketball and leads his team to victory. He then spends the night at his friends Josh and Rieger's house. The next day, on Martin Luther King's Day, the three boys head to an icy lake to play. A local warns them it's dangerous and threatens to call the police if they don't stop. Despite the warning, the boys keep playing. While checking a text from his mom, John accidentally falls through the ice, and Josh and Rieger fall in too. Seeing this, the neighbor calls for help, and firefighters quickly arrive to rescue the boys. Josh and Rieger are quickly rescued, but John remains unconscious underwater. Just as the firefighters are about to stop searching, one of them, Tommy, hears a voice telling him to go back. Thinking it's his chief talking, he tries one more time and manages to bring John to the surface. John is rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where the medical team struggles to find his pulse. It turns out he was underwater for more than 15 minutes, far longer than the brain can usually survive without oxygen. When Joyce learns of the accident, she rushes to the hospital and tearfully calls Brian to come right away. The doctors believe John doesn't have long to live, and Dr. Stutterer suggests Joyce prepare to say goodbye to her son. Overwhelmed with grief, Joyce cries over John and prays for his recovery. Miraculously, after her prayer, John shows a very faint pulse. The medical staff is amazed by this turn of events. Seeing this as a hopeful sign, Dr. Stutterer recommends transferring John to a more advanced hospital and suggests Dr. Garrett, who specializes in drowning cases. After this, he goes home, where his daughter Abby, who has a crush on John and is also his classmate, starts asking about how he's doing. He's unsure what to tell her without getting her hopes up too high, but he ends up telling her that John's survival is a miracle and it's the most amazing thing he has ever seen. In the next part, John is transferred to another hospital under Dr. Garrett's care and is placed in a medically induced coma. Dr. Garrett tells Joyce and Brian that John's chances of survival are very slim, and even if he does survive, he could have serious brain damage and might live in a vegetative state for the rest of his life. Despite this, Joyce remains hopeful and believes that John will pull through. Meanwhile, Tommy tells his coworkers that he thinks the voice that told him to go back during the rescue was the chief's, but the chief denies ever saying anything. The chief thinks the only explanation for the rescue is divine intervention. Tommy, however, admits he doesn't believe in God. As word spreads, support pours in from the community, the church, and the school. The local news even covers John's story, and Pastor Jason visits the hospital. He offers to stay with John, giving Joyce and Brian a break, but Joyce is initially annoyed by his presence because she doesn't really like him. Over time, she starts to appreciate his genuine care and support. Both Joyce and Jason begin to believe that there's something miraculous about John's recovery. After a few days, John seems to start waking up. While holding his hand, Joyce feels him squeeze it. Jason, holding John's other hand, engages him in a conversation about basketball to gauge his responsiveness. When asked to choose between LeBron and Jordan, John squeezes their hands, exciting them both. They try to show this to Dr. Garrett, but they can't replicate John's response. Throughout this time, Joyce never leaves John's side, whereas Brian visits less frequently. Joyce grows frustrated with other parents and doctors who are pessimistic about John's condition. She becomes fixated on his recovery, insisting that the medical staff prioritize him, which starts to drive people away, including her husband. Brian tries to get Joyce to manage her feelings better and be kinder to others, questioning her intense focus. In return, she confronts him about not being more present at John's bedside during such a hard time. Brian admits he's devastated seeing John like this. They argue fiercely, and Joyce claims that John would have died without their efforts. This upsets Brian, and he leaves abruptly after a sharp exchange. Later, Joyce, feeling overwhelmed, goes to the hospital's roof to pray. She seeks forgiveness and asks to accept whatever comes, seeing snow as a sign of a response. After this, she goes down to apologize to Brian. They then look out of John's room window and see his classmates and other community members singing for him outside, noticing a tear on John's cheek. Tommy visits John in the hospital, and Joyce thanks him for saving her son. Tommy humbly says he was just doing his job and leaves after wishing John well. The next day, Dr. Garrett tells Joyce and Brian that the drugs used to wake John might be doing more harm than good, and he can't continue like this for much longer. Joyce, once adamant about saving him at any cost, decides to stop the medication and let John wake naturally, ready for any outcome. When they bring John out of the coma, he immediately starts having severe seizures and is quickly sedated. Joyce tries to connect with him by talking. Meanwhile, John imagines swimming to the surface, mirroring the accident day as he wakes up. When he opens his eyes, Joyce asks if he remembers her. He recognizes her as his mother, bringing joy to everyone around. Meanwhile, John's friends get texts from Joyce about his recovery, and soon everyone at school knows about it. His friends visit him in the hospital, and when Abby gives him a hug, they all tease him playfully. 28 days after the accident, John is back at school, receiving congratulations and applause from his classmates and teachers for returning healthy. After one of his classes, his teacher tells John about her husband who died from an aneurysm in his sleep and questions why God saves some people but not others. John, unsure of what to say, simply apologizes and walks away. He notices that some students are bitter, wondering why he was saved when their loved ones were not. Later, John, feeling overwhelmed, rides his bike to a lake where he finds Tommy. He thanks Tommy for saving him, but Tommy says he just pulled John out of the water and admits that these events have made him believe in God, something he didn't do before. On Sunday, John goes to church with his family. During the service, Pastor Jason invites the Smith family on stage. John and Joyce, tearfully thankful, express their gratitude for everyone's support. Jason then asks the congregation to stand and pray together for John's continued recovery. John starts mending relationships he had strained and embraces a new sense of purpose in his life. In the epilogue, it's mentioned that the Smith family still lives in Missouri and now has a good relationship with Pastor Jason. John plans to become a basketball coach and also pursue a career in ministry. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe. Your support is appreciated. Remember, Jesus loves you. Have a blessed day and see you next time.